This is a battle between the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers, the strongest sorcerer of today versus the strongest sorcerer in history, and I'm here to explain this whole arc. So the entire Gojo vs Sukuna arc starts with the unsealment of Gojo in the chapter 221. The evil planner himself, Kenjaku, says that he's done everything to prevent Gojo from getting unsealed. Kenjaku has placed the prison realm down in the subduction zone of the Japan's Trench, threw cursed spirits on top of that, and also created additional seals. So in the case of Gojo getting unsealed, the water pressure would instantly crush him. But of course, it didn't work. As soon as Gojo got unsealed, he pulled up to Kenjaku with no problems. And he was shocked to see Gojo alive, well and unsealed despite all of the efforts. Gojo is threatening to kill Kenjaku, but suddenly an attack interrupts their dialogue. An attack from none other than the king of courses himself, who by that time has already taken over the Megumi's body. And he greeted Satoru. Sukuna was spewing his death threats towards Gojo, reminding him of his words from the season 1. In response, Gojo said that Sukuna ran away like a dog from Yuji, calling him a loser, which triggered Sukuna's main simp, Uraumi. But she got instantly one-shotted by Satoru, just to show the real difference in level between Gojo and other sorcerers. But in the end, both parties agreed to postpone their fight on the 24th of December, because apparently it was inconvenient to fight right now for both of the sides, as Sukuna was tied by a binding wall with the Kenjaku. Or at least that was what the Gojo has assumed of it. While our sensei himself said that he had some business to be taken care of. Kenjaku seemingly looking worried asked Gojo if he's really not thinking that he could lose. To which Satoru replied with his iconic line, saying that he would win. So in the span of the month's break we see that Sukuna has regained his full cursed energy power. Gojo found out about the whole Shibuya incident and Nanami's death. And Kenjaku, he just keeps venting out his TED Talks ideas now to Tengen's corpse. But in this same chapter we also got a teaser of Yuji's potential new cursed technique. Finally, my guy would be able to do something else besides kicking and punching. But my expectations shattered when by the end of this chapter, Gege Kutami, the rushing machine himself, he unceremoniously time-skipped us straight to the date. Shinjuku, December 24th. Gojo pulls up to everybody, escorted by the principal Gakuganji and Utahime. It was unusual to see Satoru looking stressed. But a slap on the back from Yuji and students helped to break the tension from Satoru's face. Everybody was cheering for Satoru, filling his heart with determination. And on the other side was Sukuna, just alone and with a smug face. And so the battle begins. Now, Gojo starts with a brilliant opening move. Utahime's cursed technique buffs Satoru Gojo. It buffs both his cursed energies reserve and the output, while Gojo is starting to chant for the Hollow Purple. And both of them are actually doing the full chant rituals with chants and dances. This way they both are utilizing 120% of their techniques. And it's going to be an extremely charged up Hollow Purple. But besides Utahime and Gojo, I wanna point out the real MVP of this attack. And it's Ichichi. Ichichi used to be a talentless sorcerer in the past. Now he is a supervisor who has to constantly work with the Satoru Gojo himself. And of course, he has a crippling fear of not living up to Gojo's demands. He asked Gojo why he chose him and not someone else to help, as he clearly is not the most skilled barrier user around. You are the man I trust the most. That's the only reason I need. Ichichi never expected to receive such a trust from the strongest sorcerer of this era. So even if it cost him his life, Ichichi wants to answer to Gojo's trust. Buffed by Utahime's technique, chants and everything, Gojo launches a 200% Hollow Purple. Sukuna, looking really intimidated, for the first time in a series actually, tries to block this ginormous attack. And thanks to Ichichi's barrier, Sukuna misread Gojo's opening move. Don't get me wrong, Sukuna was sensing Gojo's presence in general, but he couldn't sense the immense amount of cursed energy because of the Ichichi's barrier. Not until the attack was already right in front of him. The Hollow Purple hit the target, causing a massive amount of destruction. Sukuna survived this Hollow Purple, however both of his arms got blown up in the process of blocking. Which is not that huge of a problem with his level of RCT. Gojo teleports to Sukuna's face and proclaims that it is Sukuna who is the challenger here. In response, Sukuna says that it was just a surprise attack, calling Gojo just a nameless fish on his cutting board. Sukuna is still wearing Megumi's face and not reverting into his 4-armed 2-face form, but Gojo is not afraid about Megumi, as he can worry about Megumi after he's killed Sukuna. which makes sense since Sukuna has already escaped this once in the Yuji's body. The fight starts with the hand-to-hand combat. Similar to Cursus and Shibuya, Sukuna is using the domain amplification, so he's able to actually touch and fight Gojo. He on the other hand is continuously using blue to speed himself up, successfully dodging Sukuna's attacks. And with the power of blue, Gojo flicks! And it pushes Sukuna right through the window. And the push force is ginormous, as Sukuna is getting tossed even further behind. Then Sukuna barely but avoids Gojo's blue enhanced attacks, and responds with a quick dismantle that cuts the whole building behind Gojo, creating a distraction for him to land domain amplification attacks. Sukuna pushes on Satoru with his amplified attacks, but Gojo reads through them all. Then they jump right into the falling building. Say what you want, but Gege Akutami is really a master of portraying the motion. Sukuna and Gojo are readying to launch a powerful attack, which destroys the whole skyscraper. Through the rubble and smokes, they both emerge unscratched. We see them joking and smiling. Clearly, both of the strongest are enjoying this fight. Then from this epic clash between the strongest, we are transported to a room filled with screens where students dissect the battle. And through the conversation we discover a couple of interesting things. First, Yuta says that Sukuna's total cursed energy is more than double of his amount. Which is crazy to think about, since throughout the whole series, Yuta always had the most amount of cursed energy. And often his cursed energy's presence alone was overwhelming his enemies. And you're saying that Sukuna is having more than double of that? That's insane. Then Kashimo says that Sukuna's moves are ridiculously refined, because he thinks that if not for Satoru's 6 eyes, Sukuna would probably be winning in terms of efficiency in utilizing cursed energy. Coming back to the strongest, a domain clash did not keep himself waiting. The domains are evenly matched, as inside of the Gojo's barrier, the two sure hits overlaps and cancels each other's out. If one of them sustains enough damage, causing the collapse of their domain, the other sure hit will immediately strike, evenly matched. But in this moment, Itadori starts to remember something important. A myriad of slashes begin to appear outside of the Gojo's barrier. The thing is that Malevolent Shrine covers bigger area than Satoru's domain, and it's only inside of the barrier where they are evenly matched. Unable to withstand the slashes outside, Gojo's barrier collapses. To be honest, it was a great way of utilizing the already known domain mechanics to settle the everlasting debate of whose domain is the strongest and without it feeling like an asshole. As it takes way back to the first season when Mahito's barrier was broken by Yuji's outside attacks. Gojo's barrier collapses, and he gets a huge slash on his neck. Gojo quickly heals the wound with the reverse curse technique, but Sukuna is bursting in his smug smile because he's ready to cut the strongest saucer into the million of pieces. The full-powered Malevolent Shrine attacks. Gojo is using the reverse curse technique on max capacity to survive through the Malevolent Shrine. The fact that he withstood the full-powered shrine is an incredible durability feat. While Gojo gets violated by the innumerable amount of slashes, he himself thinks about the one thing only. Satoru is glad that Sukuna's domain technique is way weaker than the Limitless. Gojo starts running away from the effective range, but Sukuna jumps at him to prevent the escape. Sukuna and Gojo starts brawling, where to his big surprise, King of Curses was unable to land a single attack on the injured Satoru. Sukuna is surprised with how well Satoru is moving, despite him using the RCT on full and not having his cursed technique. Gojo activates a simple domain to nullify Malevolent Shrine's attacks. And while the simple domain is active, he can fully heal himself. And normally it should not be possible using both RCT and a simple domain at the same time. But it's Gojo, so that's okay. Gojo and Sukuna keep throwing hands when simple domain starts to get torn apart, which to be expected against a strong domain, says Choso. Satoru reactivates the simple domain to keep fighting, but it's getting destroyed even faster now. Gojo is unable to heal his wounds anymore. This looks bad. When suddenly, Gojo teleports towards the King of Curses and activates the point-blank reversal red, thrashing Rem and Sukuna right back into his shrine. Yuta is absolutely shocked, because it seems that Gojo has just regenerated his cursed technique, which should not be possible, since burnt out cursed techniques is a very different matter to heal compared to the wounds. So Yuta has no clue to what or how Satoru just did that. He's sure on one thing though, that this was something unbelievable, or potentially dangerous. Domain expansion, round 2. Gojo expands his domain once again, while Ramen Sukuna is expanding the range of his malevolent shrine. To withstand the damage, Satoru just flipped the conditions of his domain. Now the barrier has become sturdy outside. They exchange blows during the domain clash. Sukuna can now use domain amplification during his domain expansion. Usually you cannot activate the amplification and your cursed technique at the same time. But it's not like Gojo gives a shit about that, outmaneuvering and punching Sukuna in the torso. However, something strange happens, as when the King of Curses steps into the Gojo's part of the domain, he deactivates his cursed technique. Sukuna is continuously sticking to Gojo, because he knows that if he's touching Satoru Gojo, then the unlimited void sure hit will not attack him. That's one of the conditions of Gojo's domain. And because Sukuna has removed his sure hit attacks inside of the barrier, he can now add more power to his outside attacks to break the barrier. Once again, the unlimited void collapses. Kashimo is ready to go fight next, as he thinks it's a Gojo war. But the wounds are shallow. Gojo is using the Falling Blossom emotion. It's an anti-domain technique that automatically blocks the enemy's sure hit effect with the cursed energy. It's actually a signature Zenin clan's technique that only a select few knows about. Here I wanna say that Gojo is acting pretty stubborn, but at the same time very self-confidently. Instead of clashing domains with Sukuna, he could have just teleported away from the Malevolent Shrine and not fight domains. Sukuna is not enclosing his barrier, so you can just run away from its radius, especially if you are Satoru Gojo, the one person who can instantly teleport. But you know, why would you run away? When if you win the domain clash, the successful unlimited void gives a guaranteed victory. Gojo is expanding his domain again, for the third time already, but his effective radius is now covering the whole street. The bigger the barrier, the more fragile it gets. But suddenly the barrier starts becoming smaller and smaller, becoming even smaller than the size of a basketball. By making the barrier this small, Gojo has heavily increased its durability. Hold on, but that's impossible. Making the barrier too small to hold yourself and your opponent, the barrier would just collapse. It's the weirdest power-up in the history, I guess, as because of the prison realm, Gojo can now envision smaller barriers for his domain expansion. The barrier ball starts to get shaken by Sukuna's attacks, but it's holding out way better this time. His plan is working. But some moments later the ball domain is starting to get chopped with heavy slashes. If the barrier breaks, Gojo is going to lose. The barrier breaks, but nothing happens. The Malevolent Shrine was also broken. Sukuna destroyed the bow domain outside, and at the same time, Gojo damaged him to the breaking point inside of the barrier. The fight keeps everyone on the verge of their seats. Sukuna and Gojo are back to the good old hand-to-hand combat. Sukuna holds his ground pretty well, but clearly Gojo is dominating in the skirmish. Satoru wonders why Sukuna is not giving his own a fight, because he's not using any other cursed techniques, and even when Gojo flipped the conditions of his domain, Sukuna didn't even try to destroy the unlimited void from the inside, where it should be weakened. Besides, Gojo was having an upper hand inside of the domains. We see Wheel of Adaptation turning inside of the Sukuna's shadows, while Gojo's getting a nosebleed. To be clear, he's having a nosebleed not because of the wheel turn, but because of overusing his brain with the reverse cursed techniques. Domain expansion. They activated their domains at the same time, which means that just like Gojo, Sukuna also can restore his burnt out technique with the RCT. Previous domain battle lasted for 3 minutes in total. That means that Gojo is on a 3-minute timer. In 3 minutes he needs to damage Sukuna to the point where he can no longer maintain his domain. But it's not like Gojo is on the ropes. Unlimited void sure hit effect is way too broken. If the unlimited void is able to land even for a few seconds, it will incapacitate Sukuna and Gojo will win. Gojo boxes, tosses and thrashes Sukuna during their domain battle. But as Gojo landed a heavy punch that broke Sukuna's concentration, the unlimited void collapsed as well. Again, simultaneous. And without taking any time off, they are activating it again. Domain expansion. Yuta noticed a slight delay in the King of Curses movements. Sukuna was busy healing his body, that's why he didn't make it in time to properly restore his Curses technique. King of Curses starts feeling dizzy, while Gojo makes a huge punch in the chest, crushing Sukuna's heart. The unlimited void landed. Satoru wants to take his lungs and liver to bring him even closer to death. He's about to kill Sukuna. The Divine General Mahoraga appears out of the shadows. Satoru is shocked, but he's ready to launch the Red Reversal to destroy it in one shot. However, Gojo's domain gets broken by Mahoraga. Sukuna went for a big outplay in his strategy. He placed the Wheel of Adaptation on Megumi's soul in the shadows and forced him to tank the Unlimited Void 5 times to make Mahoraga adapt to this attack. Dude, Megumi can never catch a break. However, the way that King of Curses has escaped Satoru's strongest attack, it really sounds like a plot armor. Mahoraga is dismissed back in the shadows, because otherwise it would get just one-shotted by Satoru. Sukuna taunts Gojo if he has anything to say. But Gojo says that it's warming his heart that his enemy is using such a desperate tricks. Not as desperate as you, says Sukuna. However, Sukuna admits that the Unlimited Void was a real pain to deal with. That's why his first priority was taking that card out of the deck. Gojo understands that Megumi's soul has not fully adapted yet. So if Satoru uses his domain once again, he will be able to incapacitate Sukuna and destroy Mahoraga in one attack. But Sukuna loves to this claim. Something clicks inside of the Gojo's brain as he's starting to have a terrible nosebleed. This whole refreshing technique shenanigans has strained his brain heavily. The right prefrontal cortex, a place where the cursed techniques are engraved. In order to refresh himself, he was destroying this part of his brain with the cursed energy, and then quickly healing it back with the reverse curse technique. Yuta shouts that using that even once is already way too risky, while Choso considers that based on the amount of times Gojo did that trick, he should be at his death door. What's worse is that Sukuna should be fine, because he did that trick less times than Satoru. Gojo has no options left. You were born in an era without me, and hailed to be the strongest. And yet you turned out to be painfully ordinary. Is it really Gojo over? Sukuna's brain was also overloaded! It was less than 10 seconds and Sukuna took a blow from the Unlimited Void. And yet, just like Satoru, Sukuna's brain suffered enough damage to make the main expansion impossible. Gojo is laughing, looks like it's hitting you pretty damn hard! After all the trash talk, it was super satisfying seeing Sukuna shitting his pants. Throughout the heaven and earth, they both are the brain that wants. Gojo says that his students are watching, so he's gonna keep showing off. This same phrase Gojo said to Sukuna in their first encounter. But now the fight is on a brand new territory, without their domains. Here, Gege Akutami felt the need to add more explanation of why Gojo's hand-to-hand combat is ridiculous. So, Gojo is continuously using his limitless blue that speeds him up. But also when he punches, the blue absorbs the space between the target, that disorients the target and increases his punching strike. The space absorption reminds me of the stand The Handle from JoJo. Back to the fight of the strongest, Gojo is ragdolling Sukuna. In the hand-to-hand, the fight just doesn't look fair. Gojo tries to trap Sukuna in the Chibaku Tensei, but he breaks away and closes the distance. Sukuna activates the domain amplification, so he's able to withstand Gojo's onslaught. Gojo then uses Kagebuncha no Jutsu? I don't know, man, it's probably some trick he used with the limitless blue. Sukuna reads through that though, punching Gojo away, but Gojo sustained literally 0 damage from that punch. The current state of the battle. It's a race against the clock before the Makora's wheel adapts to Gojo's invincibility. It's worth noting that when Sukuna uses domain amplification, it interrupts with the adaptation. On the other hand, Gojo is limiting himself to only using the cursed technique lapse. To adapt to Gojo's invincibility, Sukuna needs 4 spins in total, which leaves him with 3 more spins. Sukuna responds with his usual trash talk, saying that it's a countdown to when he's going to wipe the smirk from Gojo's face. Gojo's response: you know that he's ready to beat him dead before Sukuna reaches all of his spins. The fight continues. Gojo's attacking with 8 orbs of blue simultaneously, but Sukuna evades the attack. Gojo jumps at Sukuna, he blocks the punch but gets kicked to the ground. As he's falling down, one of the orbs hits Sukuna. But the wheel turns and Sukuna smirks. There's only 1 spin left to adaptation. They break into the nearby building. Gojo is ready to give him hell. All this time he's been bluffing to only using blue. Satoru fires an almost point blank reversal red into the King of Curses. Sukuna used the amplification to minimize the damage. King of Curses is ready to celebrate the victory. But the Gojo's red was not exploded yet. Reversal red makes an explosive backshot at the King of Curses. Satoru used this building's layout to make a strike of reversal red from behind. As Sukuna shakes from the explosion, Satoru leaps towards him and... Black flash. Sukuna is knocked out. The wheel falls. It seems to look like a victory for Gojo, but as Will reaches the ground, it makes a force spin. Shadows trap Gojo, preventing his escape. Divine General Mahoraga makes an appearance, making a huge slash on Gojo's torso. And yes, it bypassed the infinity. What's worse is that Gojo is taking way longer to heal his wounds. Shoko says that it's due to his brain damage that his cursed output has dropped. She tries to comfort everyone, saying that at least the brain damage should be the same for Sukuna. But the possibility of Gojo's losing this thought has struck everyone. Even the Gojo himself. But he's happy. Gojo fights Mahoraga. He recites the Jujutsu incantations to increase his output. Gojo fires the red. Sukuna uses rabbits to escape from the red reversal, and he throws a fire extinguisher at Gojo. That was unexpected. But then, using water from the Max Elephant, Sukuna mimics Choso's piercing blood technique. He's shooting the piercing water in the moment when Mahoraga has disabled the limitless technique. 2-on-1, the fight is uneven. That's why Sukuna makes it a 3-on-1. He summons a new Shikigami, Fusion Beast Agito. Gojo calls it a lost alien child, which cracks a smile on Sukuna's face. 3-on-1, the fight continues. Back from the shadows, Sukuna shoots piercing water. Gojo reads that and is dodging Mahoraga's punch, then makes a move on Sukuna. But Gojo got surrounded with Shikigamis. Escaping from their grasp, he fires the reversal red. But Mahoraga almost doesn't give a shit. It's gradually adapting to this attack. Dragging out the fight is not an option, and Gojo understands that he needs to finish this with his unlimited Hollow Purple. Not going to lie, Gojo is in a tough spot right now. That's why Yuta wants to join the fight. With the help of Rika, he wants to at least take on the Shikigamis, freeing Gojo's hands in the fight. But in the end, he changed his mind. He realized that realistically this battle is way out of his caliber. Kinjaku rightfully noted that Gojo is the strongest when he's fighting alone. Moreover, Hakari adds that because of the Gojo's pressure, Sukuna probably is unable to use everything he's got in his arsenal. For example, this black box technique was proven to be quite destructive, but it wouldn't work against Gojo's Limitless, but it would perfectly be able to blow up Yuta. Back to the fight, Agito and Mahoraga are on the offensive. Gojo punches another black flash, bursting through Agito's stomach, but the wound is instantly regenerated. Gojo rips its tail, but the tail grows back. Agito consists from the inherited powers of the Great Serpent, Morning Tiger and a Tranquil Deer. And because its core is a Tranquil Deer, it's able to regenerate. But unlike Mahoraga, Agito is not adapted, so Gojo can easily destroy it in one shot, and that's his plan. Mahoraga throws rocks at him and tries to slash Gojo. He on the other hand successfully evades the slash and outmaneuvers both Shikigamis in close combat. There is a possibility that Agito will heal Sukuna, that's why it needs to be destroyed quickly. But where is Sukuna? All this time Sukuna is hiding in the shadows. And all because he doesn't want to risk of being hit by the Hollow Purple. Even though he has already tanked the Hollow Purple before, Sukuna admits that he would most likely die if he were to tank a point-blank Hollow Purple at his state right now. By the way, I think that we can already confidently say that the King of Curses used the Domain Amplification technique in order to withstand through the first Hollow Purple, as we see time and time again that this is a technique that he uses to survive through the limitless attacks. In the meantime, Sukuna scouts Mahoraga, and the wheel turns. Gojo loses an arm to the slash. Lovely for Sukuna. Gojo is getting crowded, it's a 3-on-1. Sukuna kicks Gojo at Agito. Gojo with a serious injury against Sukuna, Mahoraga and Agito. This looks really bad. Agito punches Gojo in the head, but it dealt no damage, because Gojo summoned the Limitless Blue. Gojo completely destroys Agito with the maximum output blue. The Blue Max changed the entire tide of this battle. Mahoraga protecting Sukuna from blue was quite funny to look at, but Agito is completely crushed with the pressure from blue. And narrator says that in 41 seconds, the Hollow Purple is going to leave a mark in the Shinjuku. When a sorcerer hits a black flash, his cursed energy control increases, and the sorcerer himself is put into the flow state. Gojo Satoru has hit 2 black flashes, so it restored his dropped cursed energy output, and Gojo feels a rush of exhilaration, while the first time in 1,000 years, the King of Curses felt nervousness. Black Flash! Gojo punches Mahoraga, and outspeeds both of them, easily grapples and throws Sukuna into the Mahoraga. Black Flash! Force Black Flash has landed, but Mahoraga protected Sukuna from that punch. Just so you know, he's wrecking all 3 of his enemies in the close combat simultaneously. Satoru starts to chant for the red reversal. But Sukuna is ready to make Mahoraga tank this attack so it can adapt even further. You may think that Gojo has fumbled here, but Gojo launches it upwards in the air. Sukuna panics and screams at Mahoraga. The blue that Satoru used to crush Agito is still up in the air. He wants to combine the red and blue spheres to create the hollow purple manually. Gojo blitzes Mahoraga and prevents it from breaking the blue sphere, whereas Sukuna shoots the piercing water to destroy the limitless blue. Gojo was a tad bit slow to prevent him from shooting his technique, but Satoru recites the incantations, activating blue for a moment. Sukuna has failed to prevent the hollow purple. We see Yuta apologizing to everyone, because if he went to help Satoru, then he wouldn't be able to do this. Satoru is finishing the Jujutsu chants. Hollow technique. Purple. Mahoraga is completely wiped out by this attack. Attack that destroyed the whole street. Sukuna is on his last legs. Gojo says that it was an unlimited hollow purple, because it was not bound by a specific target. It even hit himself, but Satoru received less damage, because it was his own cursed energy. Kusakabe summarizes the current situation. Gojo has regained his cursed technique and output through the black flashes, versus Sukuna, who has slowed healing, no Mahoraga, and no ability to deal any damage without the amplification. His conclusion? Gojo wins. We see Gojo meet Geto at some place, assumedly an airport. Are you kidding me? This sucks! I've always told my students that when you die alone, so please tell me that this is some kinda ridiculous dream. Does it matter though? So how was the King of Curses? Insanely freaking strong, and he wasn't giving all he had. In the airport, Gojo also meets and talks to Nanami and Haibara. Nanami tells Gojo that he died without regrets. He also adds that according to Meimei's theory, if you want to become someone new, then you should go north. And if you want to stay as who you were, then you should go south. Gojo feels no regrets. We see that in the airport he got to meet his principal, Geto, Nanami and Haibara. Also Riko and Kuroya here too. We even got to meet someone looking like Toji. Yes, Gojo Satoru has died. Sukuna explains the trick he pulled off to kill Gojo Satoru. He says, Mahoraga is always adapting. If it receives another identical attack during analyzation period, the adaptation speed accelerates. Once the technique is adapted to, the analysis doesn't stop here, as Mahoraga would continue to adapt even further. The first adaptation to Gojo's invincibility was changing the properties of its own cursed energy, which is not what Sukuna desired. However, the second adaptation was exactly what he needed, as Sukuna wanted to witness an application of a slash-type technique by Mahoraga that would be able to bypass Gojo's infinity. So just like when he mimicked the piercing blood technique with the water, the King of Curses would be able to copy Mahoraga's slashes with his own slashes technique. It was a second adaptation that launched a slash that cut off Gojo's arm. The slash was not targeting the Satoru Gojo in particular, but the whole existence itself in the space. Infinity meant nothing as long as the target existed in the space. Sukuna says that it was a near impossible technique to mimic, but the blueprint for Mahoraga was really good. You did well, Satoru Gojo. I won't forget you for as long as I live. As he drew his last breath, Gojo smiled. Gojo Satoru has lost. But Gojo was glad that he went this way. He always had been regarded as a deity, as the strongest, as the honored one. And for his whole life he was isolated from the humankind. So he was glad that he could just die to someone who was simply stronger than him. Sukuna says that he is in a good mood, so he's asking him not to spoil his pleasure. Sparing no time to mourn the death of Gojo Satoru, Hajime Kashimo enters the battle. And that was the whole Gojo vs Sukuna arc. Please make sure to subscribe for more videos that are coming in the future. This is my first video on the channel, so thank you for watching.